Walt Disney built an empire on one principle: do a good job, and the money will take care of itself. Snow White was never supposed to be remade. Bob Iger remade it anyway. $15 billion in acquisitions, $11 billion lost on streaming, 7,000 layoffs, and a stock price cut in half. This is the satisfying downfall of a company that forgot why it was loved. Walt Disney never built his legacy on balance sheets. He staked everything, his studio, his reputation, his family's security, on the idea that if you poured your soul into the work, the rewards would follow. The phrase that echoes through Disney lore is simple: do a good job. You don't have to worry about the money, it will take care of itself. Whether or not Walt ever spoke those words on camera, the spirit defined his every gamble. In a rare 1966 interview, he admitted that it was money. It takes a lot of money to make these dreams come true. We had everything mortgaged, including my family. But for Walt, money was always the obstacle, never the goal. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the proof. In 1937, Hollywood called it Disney's folly. He ignored the cynics, mortgaged his future, and delivered a film so groundbreaking it rewrote what animation could be. The story goes that Walt insisted Snow White must never be remade. A masterpiece should stand untouched. There is no signed memo, no final order, just the weight of myth and the reverence of those who worked closest to him. Even decades later, the son of the film's original animator would say Walt Disney would be turning in his grave at the idea of a remake. For a time, the company remembered. The so-called Disney Renaissance, The Little Mermaid in 1989, Beauty and the Beast in 1991, Aladdin in 1992, and The Lion King in 1994 proved that chasing quality still brought fortune. Each new film tried to outdo the last, not recycle it. Greatness first, profit second. That was the covenant. And for a while, it held. Until it didn't. Bob Iger did not inherit Walt's appetite for risk. He replaced it with a shopping spree. By the mid-2000s, Disney's own creative engine was sputtering. The answer was not to double down on invention, but to buy someone else's. In 2006, Disney swallowed Pixar for $7.4 billion, an all-stock deal that handed Steve Jobs a seat on the board and handed Disney a lifeline. The press release called it a marriage of storytelling cultures. The real story, however, was that Disney had lost faith in its own. 3 years later, Iger cut a $4 billion check for Marvel. The ink was barely dry on Iron Man's first box office haul, but Disney wanted more than a superhero. They wanted a universe. The deal transferred 5,000 characters and decades of comic book history into Disney's vault. Marvel's existing film slate, already mapped out before the acquisition, now became Disney's pipeline. The company did not just buy heroes, it bought momentum. By 2012, the pattern was unmistakable. Lucasfilm, and with its Star Wars and Indiana Jones, went for $4.05 billion, another blend of cash and stock. George Lucas cashed out, and Disney took control of the galaxy. Within 6 years, 3 of the most creative studios in modern history were no longer rivals, but subsidiaries. Each acquisition was trumpeted as a bold step forward. But the logic was simple. Why risk building the next classic when you can own the last one? The company that once gambled everything on a cartoon princess now spent billions to lock up other people's dreams. Ownership replaced invention. The balance sheet looked invincible. For a moment, it was. Pixar didn't just join Disney's empire, it outshined it. From 2007 to 2017, Pixar swept up 6 Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature, with films like Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, and Inside Out. Each new release became an event. Critics and audiences lined up to celebrate stories that felt alive, not recycled. The Oscar count kept rising, and so did the box office. By 2017, Pixar's films had grossed billions worldwide, making Disney's own animation slate look like an afterthought. Meanwhile, Marvel Studios delivered a windfall that executives could only dream about. Marvel's Phase 1, 6 films released between 2008 and 2012, pulled in roughly $4 billion at the global box office. The Avengers alone earned $1.5 billion, smashing records and cementing the idea that Disney could buy its way to cultural dominance. The press called it a masterstroke. Shareholders cheered. For a brief dazzling moment, it looked like the company could do no wrong. Every trophy and dollar sign seemed to justify the new strategy. Why build when you can buy? Inside the boardroom, confidence turned to swagger. The money was rolling in, and nobody wanted to hear about limits. Lucasfilm, once the gold standard for fan devotion, became the cautionary tale. The Star Wars sequel trilogy arrived with the promise of a new era, then unraveled in real time. The Force Awakens exploded into theaters in 2015, pulling in over $2 billion worldwide. But the momentum did not last. The Last Jedi, released just 2 years later, split the audience in half. Director Rian Johnson steered the story into uncharted territory, upending expectations and igniting a firestorm across forums, YouTube, and social media. Petitions to strike the film from canon drew tens of thousands of signatures. Hashtags trended for weeks. By the time The Rise of Skywalker limped across the finish line in 2019, global box office had dropped to $1.08 billion, barely half the peak. J.J. Abrams, brought back to course correct, delivered a film that tried to please everyone and satisfied almost no one. The constant shuffling of directors, rewrites, and public apologies made it clear Lucasfilm was not steering the ship, it was reacting to the storm. The result was a fractured fanbase and a franchise that once united generations now mired in division. Disney's stewardship had turned the world's most beloved galaxy into a battleground, proving that even the most powerful legacy can be squandered. Marvel Studios became the gold standard for assembly line entertainment. By 2014, the company locked itself into a relentless schedule: 3 films a year, every year, no exceptions, no breaks for breath or doubt. The superhero machine didn't just churn, it thundered. Each new release arrived on cue, another cog in the never-ending universe. What started as event cinema quickly turned into homework. Audiences were expected to keep up with a sprawling web of sequels, spin-offs, and post-credit teases, or risk falling behind. The excitement that once greeted a new Marvel film dulled into obligation. Online, the backlash was impossible to ignore. A single trailer could rack up 460,000 dislikes, a number that would have been unthinkable in the days when Iron Man first took flight. Social media, once a playground for fandom, now bristled with exhaustion and cynicism. The strategy was simple: more, faster, forever. But the more Disney cranked up the volume, the less anyone seemed to care. What was once a cultural moment became background noise, and the audience's patience finally began to run out. The numbers tell the story better than any press release. Since 2001, Disney has churned out over 100 big-budget films, but only a handful dared to try something new. The rest? Sequels, remakes, and franchise extensions, safe bets dressed up as spectacle. The calculation is brutal. Why risk inventing the next classic when you can just repackage the last one? The result is a creative drought that even Disney can't hide. Take Wish, the studio's much-hyped centennial feature. Critics tore it apart for feeling like it was built by committee and run through an algorithm. The film was supposed to celebrate a century of magic, but instead it played like a greatest hits album with no soul. For every original story that breaks through, there are dozens more that vanish without a trace. The studio that once made dreams now seems content to copy them, and the audience can feel it. Disney's creative drought didn't just poison the well. It set off a chain reaction of public disasters and financial wreckage. The Acolyte, billed as the next great Star Wars streaming event, burned through a reported $180 million for a single season before Disney quietly pulled the plug. The show's cancellation landed just as the company's public relations machine lurched into overdrive, lashing out at critics online and, in some cases, accusing disappointed fans of bigotry instead of listening to the backlash. A now infamous Instagram post mocked the audience outright, fueling the perception that Disney's leadership had stopped caring about the people who made them rich in the first place. Meanwhile, the financials told an even uglier story. Disney Plus racked up more than $11 billion in losses across 5 years, a streaming gamble that never paid off. In February 2023, the company announced 7,000 layoffs to stem the bleeding, while the stock price cratered from nearly $200 to just $85 a share. Bob Iger, once celebrated as the architect of Disney's golden age of acquisitions, now looked overwhelmed by a mess of his own making. The company was adrift, blaming its audience, and running out of both goodwill and cash. Disney's collapse isn't a mystery. It's the inevitable result of trading Walt's creed for corporate convenience. When a company remakes what was never meant to be remade, and blames the audience for its own exhaustion, the magic dies. Quality first, or there's nothing left to sell.